So when everything that you have found your identity in that maybe isn't aligned with your true identity or isn't the fullness of your true identity is gone, then who you are bubbles to the surface. That's what happened to me.
Our guest today is an inspirational and instructional communicator with a passion for empowering you to own your difference and rock your brand like a boss. Welcome to the show, host of the Brand Boss Show, Rachel Jenks.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's great to be here today.
We said it off camera. It's not only great to have you, but I'm ready to rock your brand like a boss. I love the signage that you have on the wall. We're going to have some fun today. We're going to rock it like a boss. There's a lot of people tuning in that are ready to become a boss, right? Their own boss in their own life. That can be a solopreneur. There's people tuning in that may want to build a team over time. There's a lot of people tuning in that have already done it and they're ready to level up. So that's why I wanted to bring you here. Rachel, thank you so much for being on the show. I know we got a fun conversation ahead. Are you ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready to rock it. Let's go.
I'm like, that's exactly why you're on the show, because you were ready. You were ready when we first met. We met kind of bring our audience up to speed on our relationship. Is we just met recently, so I don't know a ton of your story, which is exciting for me because I feel like we're going to take more of a deep dive today. We kind of intentionally left it where I got to know you a little bit, but not the full thing, right? Because I wanted to learn that as the audience is kind of picking up on it today. So what I'd love you to do, I'm going to let everybody know, first of all, guys, connect with Rachel on social media. She's very present on social. And also her website is brandbossstudio.com. Don't worry about writing that down or memorizing it. It's in the show notes. I made everything clickable for you. Super easy. So let's do this, Rachel. Let's get started with that deep dive, your story. Share as much or as little as you'd like. And the reason I asked this question is to really learn more about how you became a brand boss. It's not like you woke up one day and said, okay, I'm going to do this. I mean, maybe you did. I don't know.
No.
This is why I asked. So what was the progression like from maybe a little girl with a dream to where you're at today?
Yeah. So the little girl with the dream dreamed of two things. She dreamed of being a professional ballet dancer and she dreamed of being a mom. And when I was 17, I got to experience the first of those two things. I graduated high school, went to a summer intensive, thinking that it was kind of my last hurrah before I needed to get a real job, and go to college and that whole route. And 3 days into the intensive, the executive director and the artistic director came to me and said, "Hey, Rachel, we know you weren't planning on this, but if you'd like to, we'd love to have you stay and join the company." And so at 17 years old, my first career began in the world of professional ballet, which was absolutely incredible. It was one of my childhood dreams come true until it wasn't. And so I did that for a while, but eventually had some health issues and injuries and had to stop. And that was really, really hard for me because everything that I had found my identity in at that point in my very young adult life was gone overnight.
Yeah, that's interesting right there. I'm going to pause because I think there's a lot of people tuning in that have this passion for greatness, but they also have we have dreams, right? And a lot of people are they have these electric dreams, these huge, massive dreams, and at any age. And I think it's super exciting. But what ends up happening sometimes is you put all your eggs in one basket, if you will. And if you go for it, you can live in that space for some time. I'm thinking of bands. They get, they finally make it, they hit their big hit record. And after a couple albums, they don't have the same steam anymore or whatever. It could be an actress that had one or two big roles. And then all of a sudden you're like, is she still out there doing movies or he or whatever? Some people have 30-year plus careers and it's magic. But what happens is, when the moment gets taken away, it's baseball players with injury. I think of one of my favorite podcasters and friend of mine now is Ed Milet. He had an injury. I think it was a knee injury. Something happened. He could never play the game the same. And it happens with professional athletes who have already made it, maybe had a Pro Bowl season or two, and then a career-ending injury. And that identity is what up until that point they've literally identified with, right? So then how did you work yourself through realizing there's more to your story and other dreams that you can unlock.
Yeah. So that is actually something that took a while. It was not something that happened overnight. It actually happened kind of over the course of this trajectory that I'm about to share with you here. But I will say that in that moment, whenever we have a dream, and right, for me, it was professional ballet. And so I was the girl who was practicing standing in line in the supermarket. And while I was brushing my teeth, and every doorway, was something I did splits in. Like, that was me. I was constantly practicing. I was constantly leveling up, which whatever your dream is, when you're that passionate about it, you go all in like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it's gone.
Quick question for you, Rachel. Who was your biggest influence in that? Did you have like a cousin, a sister, a friend that was doing it? Or you just, do you remember falling in love with it, seeing it somewhere? How did you get
that's a great question.
Exposed to,
it was
ballet? It's something you got to kind of visualize to understand it, right?
Kind of, except I think it was inside of me. My mom says that I was dancing when I came out of the womb, probably before I came out of the womb.
So you had a pretty supportive mom. It sounds like she got you into some classes really young.
Did. Well, and honestly, awesome. I was born in New York City, so that's a place where ballet is pretty prevalent.
Dance studios at every corner, right?
Yeah, and the big billboards of the New York City ballet ballerinas and these ethereal,
Now you're talking. See, you're sharing. You did see this stuff, right?
I did. I never really thought about that before. I feel like most of it was innate, but you're right. I did have that external influence of seeing it around me as something beautiful and magical and amazing. And, then I discovered my own love of dance when I got into it myself at 4 years old when I started lessons. So that's a great question. Thank you for asking that question.
Well, no problem. Yeah. I'm feeling your story. I could picture you as a little girl dancing or doing a routine in the checkout line. I could picture turning around and seeing my daughter's 7 years old. So I could picture, sometimes, she's done a little gymnastics and swimming and different things, music lessons. She's kind of trying to find her lane right now, which is cool. I think it's great to experiment.
Absolutely.
So you were all in doing ballet. So 17, this dream started to become a realized dream. And then, what was the moment that made it, you realized that there was kind of a fork in the road? What happened there?
Injury.
Oh, it was an injury.
Okay. Yeah, it was. And my body just kind of fell apart. So I was dancing 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, and not taking care of myself properly. We'll say that. There were some eating disorders and things like that involved. And so my body just could not handle what I was subjecting
at it.
to. Literally subjecting it to every day. But it's interesting that you talk about your daughter and how she's kind of exploring these other things, swimming, gymnastics, music, because I'm a very multifaceted individual. And so I also did horseback riding. I did piano lessons. I love to sing. I'm creative. I've been a writer my whole life. But when I was at the ballet company, Mike, I didn't want anybody to know anything about me other than that I was a ballerina.
Wow. Okay.
And so
that was literally your talk about identity. You were connecting so much. You're like, this is it. Everything else, hopefully nobody opens up these doors. What were you hiding from, do you think?
I have no idea. Like in retrospect, I think because I so wanted to be like them. Mm-hmm. And for most of them, like this was their thing. Now, we also had people there who were very talented in acting and had been in movies and, all of these kind of things. But for everybody, the primary was in singing, but you were a dancer before you were anything else. Right. And so I think that's part of why, again, I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like the cool kids, which is a big part of my story. And so this was another way to be like them and for them to not know these other things about me, that I had lived in Mexico and been fluent in Spanish and, all of these facets of who I am. It's just like, nope, I'm little and I'm a ballet dancer. That's it. And, just overnight that identity was gone. Mm-hmm. And at the time, and I just want to encourage anybody who's experienced this or is maybe in the middle of it, it is incredibly disorienting. And it can make you feel like, what's the point of even dreaming? Or, it can feel like it happened to you. But what I have seen looking back now is that it actually, in a way, happened for me.
There it is. I didn't even push it, guys. There's our audience that's returning. They know I say that over and over.
Really?
I first heard it from Ed Milet. I talk about him quite a bit on the show. He's a huge influence in my life. And he's actually the person who indirectly inspired me to become an entrepreneur. It was a dream that was festering and building and growing in my heart. And when I heard his story, I was like, okay, I'm writing my own version of my own story, but hearing him kind of go and do this. But something he says is, your story happens for it. Or when you flip it to, instead of happening to you, it happens for you. It really gives you the empowerment. I know you're all about giving people empowerment with marketing, brand boss, your clients, but also guys, if you're listening and not watching on YouTube, you can see Rachel's shaking her head. Yes. So talk about unlocking that once you say this is happening for me, this whole ballerina situation that may seem like a devastating loss to you. All of a sudden you're like, man, look at what I've learned from this experience. Share that. What did you learn from that experience?
2 things happened from that experience. First thing happened was that it launched me into the world of entrepreneurship, and I'll share that story in a second. But I just want to hover here for a minute because I feel like there's something really powerful for people to take away. Because when everything that you found your identity in that is not your true identity is gone, then you discover what your true identity really is. And so for me, when being a dancer, now I will always be a dancer as long as I live, right? And, whether that's just me dancing around my living room or whatever that looks like, that's part of who I am. But that wasn't the fullness of who I am. And so when you are a creative person, when you are a multifaceted person with all of these passions, they have to find an outlet somewhere. And so when my body wasn't physically able to do the things that it had been, when that was not the key point of my life anymore, I found myself doing things I hadn't done in years. Like there would be a piano and I'd sit down at it and start to sing. So these other facets of who I am came bubbling to the surface because I wasn't quenching them anymore. And eventually they all found outlets. So
that's so good right there. That's a mic drop moment. I don't want to just roll past that. Can you go back a little bit? Yeah. Let's rewind.
Sure.
The old cassette tape, press it. You just said something really powerful there about when you remove everything else, that's when you start to, you get present with yourself. Can you say that one more time? Articulate that again?
100%. So when everything that you have found your identity in that maybe isn't aligned with your true identity or isn't the fullness of your true identity is gone, then who you are bubbles to the surface. That's what happened to me.
So true. Yeah. And so did you start playing piano and singing, and what kind of things started to come to light?
I did. I started playing piano and singing just for fun. And then I started connecting with opportunities to do that more. I started writing more and journaling more. I started just all these things. I remember I got into crafting for a while. I mean, I've always been creative, but it was like, I do want to go to Michael's or wherever and buy all these craft supplies that I may or may not use in my life. But I did. And then I was doing things like making, decorations for around my room and just like stuff like that.
Do you have a craft closet? Everyone has that craft closet. It's kind of like.
Did. This is the first time in my life I haven't had one.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm kind of proud because, buying craft supplies and making the crafts are 2 different sports right there.
Yeah.
I was really good.
My sister's a teacher, elementary level. And every time she moves, every house that she moves into or place that she's been, there's literally an entire closet that's a big, a walk-in style closet. And it's just arts and crafts. That
galore. Was me.
It's an aisle of Michael's basically in her house.
Yes. So the reason that I don't anymore is that I moved from New York to Colorado last November and I could only take what would fit in my car. So it was painful, but man, the craft closet had to go. It didn't fit. So
that's awesome. So then you had this experience. You were working for a company was it a marketing role? That kind of
no. So this is cool. So again, this whole situation with losing my career in professional ballet at that point in my life, which I will say, I did later go on to teach and things like that. So it has come back in my life. But in this season, it was gone entirely. Pushed me into the world of entrepreneurship, into something I never knew I would love, something I never knew I wanted, something I never even really knew was out there fully, I don't think. And so there was a lady who was an entrepreneur, is an entrepreneur to this day. And at that time, she scheduled different itinerant authors and speakers and had a book packing company and an 18-month-old and needed help with all the things. And she knew of the ballet company. And so she reached out and she said, hey, do you know of anybody who's looking for some work? This is what I need. So I went from dancing 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, to packing books and answering the phone and changing diapers and blowing bubbles in the backyard and whatever was needed. And I'm so grateful because it pushed me and exposed me to the world of entrepreneurship and launched me in it in a way that I never would have imagined, that I wasn't looking for at the time. It's not like I had this whole resume. This was not a dream on my horizon, right? This introduced me to, hey, this is what your life could look like.
It's really crazy as you share that story, Rachel. You went from dancing and everything is like choreographed and in this really intense and intricate way. Every step is you have to have your, I don't know, I've never done ballet, but I imagine that it's really on. You're like, here's your mark. And if you're here, it just ain't going to work the same, right? You're off, but you're seeing someone here in this crazy role, being busy, and you're changing diapers and taking phone calls and emails and all the crazy stuff and packing boxes. And in a way, that's almost like organized chaos of entrepreneurship. Yes. And you get to see how it's almost like a dance, how it all comes together. And there's like different pieces that the puzzle needs to come together for it to be choreographed. And then, hey, it works. Like we just made a sale, or we made, 29 people got their packages on time or whatever. And you're looking at your computer and seeing it all come together. It's a different dance, right?
It's a very different dance. I love that observation. That's really, really good, Mike. Yeah, I went from being extremely structured and choreographed to completely improv. Literally my day would be improv, right? And so if you think about, the structure of ballet and even how you're running a rehearsal and you're doing the same steps over, whereas improv, you put the music on and you go for it. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what I was doing.
I'm more of an improv artist, both on drums and in life.
Sweet.
But somehow when the magic happens, like the magic trick, boom, this is what I was improving and it works. Oh, it's such a good feeling.
It is.
But let's be real. There definitely needs to be structure too, because otherwise you just run yourself onto that old hamster wheel that we all love and hate at the same time, because we love doing things that we know and we're comfortable with, but we hate the fact that 6 months later, we're like, why am I still here?
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah, it's a real thing. So that was kind of your taste. You kind of like bit the apple.
That was a taste. And I'm just sharing the surface of it. So then some of those authors took off like wildfire and needed somebody to go on the road and do public relations for them. So that became me. And then that entrepreneur lady and I formed a partnership and brought on more clients, and they needed somebody to go on the road. So for several years of my life at that point, I now lived with a bag packed at all times because the phone could ring at any second. Hey, your flight leaves in an hour. Are you going with so-and-so to this conference this weekend?
Yeah.
So literally my entire life was improv. Like any moment, like, hey, you need to take Katrina to ballet class. Hey, which was something I loved doing. I was present for all those classes, all those recitals. You better believe.
You're like, get out of the way, teach. Let me show you how it's done.
It was amazing. And that's a little side note, but I got to be part of nurturing. Again, things in our lives happen not to us, but for us, and sometimes for other people as well. And so this little girl is she's not a little girl anymore. She's an incredibly brilliant, talented young woman. At this point in her life, she was this free spirit, creative soul that her structured engineering mind mom didn't know what to do with. And so the fact that I got to be part of her life and nurture that creativity in her, and she was an amazing dancer. And so I got to help kind of encourage that and nurture that in her. And we would dance around the house when she was 18 months old and, all that kind of stuff. So I got to really breathe life into the creative part of her that wouldn't have happened the same way because her parents just weren't wired that way. So I even love that part of my story. But anyway, I digress. I'm really trying to keep the point here, Mike.
No, I'm following you. I think this is really good, though. It's coloring the story in.
It is
Yeah,
coloring in a little bit more detail.
So do you still work with that same entrepreneur? What was her name?
Sherry.
No, okay. Sherry.
Yeah.
But she's a big part of your story. So are you guys still close?
We are. And her daughter, Katrina, I'm going to cry. She will forever and always be very, very dear in my life. And I had the incredible honor a couple years ago when she performed in her final Nutcracker before going off to college. Her parents flew me in to be there and surprise her. And that was absolutely incredible.
Wow,
so
that is so cool.
I am forever grateful for that whole family and the impact that they had in my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. That makes me super happy. One of my favorite things that's ever been shared on the show right there. And I mean that, like just that influence that we can make on somebody. And it could be really small things that we interject that make a big moment. Or you were physically there. You were taking her to lessons when she was a little girl. You were almost like almost like a second mom, it sounds like, or a big sister, however she sees it. Yeah, I don't know what the age gap is, but maybe a big sister. But so that's incredible. So then where do things go from there? Yeah.
So all of that takes us to like working with this entrepreneur, being on the road, all the time. It takes us to 2005.
Mm-hmm.
I was 25 years old. I'm a lady who's not afraid to share my age. I don't look it. I'm not afraid to say it. It's just a number. Right. And I'm pretty sure they got the number wrong when they wrote my birth certificate. I'm just saying. Anyway, so all of a sudden, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida for all of this. Within one weekend, I just felt, so I'm really big on following intuition and nudges and signs and direction and all that kind of stuff. That's a huge part of my story because I sure couldn't have written the story myself. And so in July of that year, I start feeling that I'm supposed to move back to Rochester, New York, which is where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, that was the last place I wanted to be.
That's a sister city to Buffalo, or I don't know who's brother, who's sister, but we're about an hour and 15 minutes away from Rochester, from where I'm sitting currently as we record. So that's cool. So I have a little bit of love for Rochester and my story too. So did you end up doing that? You went back?
I did. I packed up my life to what fit. I gave my notice to that entrepreneurial lady that I was in partnership with. Packed up my life into what would fit in my car and drove to Rochester. And I didn't really know what, and let me tell you, I don't have anything against Rochester. I just was not a huge fan of winter. Still not a huge fan of winter. But so
that's interesting though, because you're in Colorado, right?
Because I am in Colorado now.
I have the wrong that you picture, like people think of Buffalo, they think it's always got 3 feet of snow on the ground, which isn't true. Well, you got 4 seasons. What do you think? I think at Colorado, I picture that you already have your your snowboarding glasses on. No. Yeah, no. The winters here are like so different than I thought they would be. Yeah, they're way milder, way milder than Buffalo or Rochester. So I moved to Rochester, New York, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something, obviously, in the world of entrepreneurship. And one of the crazy ideas that I had, you'll appreciate this, is I was going to start a smoothie bar. Because of course, a place that is winter 6 months out of the year would have super high demand for a smoothie bar that I had seen on the beach, right? Like, no, Rachel, what were you thinking? So very quickly, I love it. I would go 12 months out of the year. Yeah. Yeah. You would have had me as a recurring client, but I don't know, customer. So did you end up actually opening that or no? No, I didn't. Yeah. But in the meantime, I connected with a successful businessman who he and his wife are best friends with my parents to this day. And he really took me under his wing and became like a business dad to me. And so, he was encouraging me like, hey, if the sky's the limit, what would you do? And so I wasn't really sure, to be honest, because here I am at 25 years old. Who do I want to be when I grow up? And so I ended up launching a consulting business. And what's so cool, Mike, is looking back now, I can see that it was all branding. I just didn't have the terminology for it at that point, right? So
are the actions that you're making aligned with who you say you are as a company? And who is it that you say that you really are? And, all this kind of stuff. So that's the essence of what I was doing, as well as doing some writing and some on camera and all this stuff. But it was all branding. So I did some consulting for some local businesses and nonprofits. And then under this particular, my business dad, I'll just call him my business dad, Rex, under his umbrella, he had a number of businesses that I consulted for. And also, he was the president of the US board of an organization based in Cambodia, an international organization called Hagar, that rehabilitated women and children who'd been trafficked and took them from the point of rescue through healthcare, counseling, education, vocational training. And then those women and children who came through their program had the opportunity, particularly the women, obviously, to be employed in one of 3 different entrepreneurial ventures they had and fully integrated into society.
That's amazing.
It is.
That gives me chills like that. I'm all about that. Actually, I have some branded merch that I sell at mikedupmerch.com. I'm not shameful to say that. Go to mikedupmerch.com because you can get Be Great and Be Grateful merch there. But 100% of any profit goes back to organizations, and a few of them that I have on the website that we give to are actually for anti-sex trafficking and getting people who've been through a horrific, experience, but now are on the other side of it, and some people are still dealing with it that need help. And it's the second largest crime in the United States of America that doesn't get talked about. People are afraid. They're like, ooh, that sounds devastating. I'm just not going to talk about it. Like, that's disgusting. And then they're like, hey, what are you doing for dinner? It's like, how are we not doing more here? So sorry to interject, but
no apology needed.
That is incredible that there's a program you were part of that's actually helping women get back, into having a life that they can lead again with purpose and everything. That's really, really cool. What was the name of the company again? Hagar
International. Cool. I'm pretty sure they're still around. I'm not connected with them anymore, so I'm not entirely sure, but I'm 99% sure they're still around. And they are a global organization. Their headquarters is in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, but that's Hagar International. Cool. And back in 2005, people didn't know that human trafficking was even a thing.
Yeah, it was super hidden.
And it was the 3rd largest form of organized crime worldwide. It was second to illegal arms and drugs.
Yeah.
And nobody knew about it. And nobody talked about it, right? And so the more that I learned about what they were doing, the more I learned about this issue, the more passionate that I became. Well, the board ended up asking me to become the director of public awareness for Hagar. So now all of a sudden I am going to the UN. I'm going to private receptions at the State Department. I'm, networking for them and doing public relations at a very high level. And it was just this whirlwind, again, speaking of improv, right? Which is so funny. I love this analogy that you used of a dance before, because I was having an epiphany that I know.
You're on the stage and they say, hey, figure it out. We need PR. We need it done in 24 hours. Do something. Then you got to dance. You got to figure it out.
You got to figure it out. And growing up, I think I really loved the structure of ballet. And I liked okay, this is what you're doing next. But really who I am is improv. And my life ever since ballet has been the most amazing improv concert ever, right? Literally every piece is improv. None of it is structured. So, or choreographed, I should say, at least not known to me. I'm following choreography that I just didn't know ahead of time. So I did that for 2 years and really poured myself wholeheartedly into this. Again, speaking of finding identity, there were ways in which I found my identity in it. I had 3 different friends take me to coffee and say, Rachel, it's not your job to single-handedly end human trafficking. I was like, what? It's not? Because, it was just, you can imagine doing international public relations. You're on Skype calls with Cambodia at 11 o'clock at night. And, hey guys, I'll catch you later. I got to go do this. And I'm traveling and all these things. So it was all consuming and I loved it. But the story that I'm about to tell you didn't happen to me. It happened for me. Because once you get involved in an issue like that, which is super important, and I really believe some people are called to, for me, the world became a very dark place because I have a huge heart, especially for children. And when you've seen 2-year-olds for sale and heard stories that, stay with you, and you start to see it everywhere and know how prevalent it is right in your backyard, and just the horrificness of it really started to weigh on me in ways that I didn't realize. And so if I had stayed in that long term, I think it would have taken me out. I couldn't have handled it emotionally, which I didn't see at the time. Right. So at the time, I, in 2007, so now I had been plunged into this world wholeheartedly and traveling again. Speaking of like, hey, your flight leaves in an hour. It wasn't quite that much, but it was like, hey, there's this event next week. We need it in DC.
Pack your bags. We're going. Yeah.
Pack your bags. You're going.
I'm going to pause this for 1 second because this feels like a big turning point in your story from where you were at in that moment. And I appreciate all that you've done to help out people who've been trafficked in horrible situations. There's people right now that are going through this. It is still an international top, 1 or 2 or 3 crime. US, I know last I heard it was still 2. And people, if you're listening to this, thank you for being with Rachel and I right now. But I realize there's ways you can help. Again, if you go to Mic'd Up Merch, there's different ways that there you'll be able to help. But also, I'm going to have Rachel share some things in a moment with us and where you can actually go and make a difference. We're going to take a quick 2-minute timeout. We'll be right back with Rachel Jenks.
Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you. And that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight. And Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, we'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today. Hey guys, it's Mike. I'd like to give a proper shout out to Navigator Bookkeeping. Look, for a long time, I ran my business without really understanding the full financial picture. I used my gut and my bank account balance to make decisions, which led to some poor choices and constant stress over my business's finances. I knew something needed to change. At the beginning of 2021, I made a decision that helped pave a more clear path for my business. I started working with Navigator Bookkeeping. Since then, my bookkeeping has been handled for me. I now understand the full financial story of my business, making important financial decisions much easier now, and it helps me plan for where my business is going. I highly recommend giving Navigator Bookkeeping an opportunity to help your business. Check them out at navigatingyourbooks.com. Again, that's navigatingyourbooks.com. It's time to know the full financial story of your business.
All right, we're back in action with Rachel Jenks. Remember, you guys can connect with her directly on social media. She has a great presence out there. Everything's clickable in the show notes, including her website as well. So right before the break, we're learning about this transitional period with Rachel. She was helping out, in a great space that needs a lot of help, which is sex trafficking, human trafficking, and then realizing the weight of that was kind of bringing you down. And I feel that too. It's whenever I hear stories and situations that are regarding sex trafficking, I never shared this with anybody. I'm gonna get emotional thinking about I want to create like a I don't know what the word is, but like a group of people that's almost like not a mafia, but like an underground group of people that go and like help out, because we're not getting the help from authorities, I feel like, or if they do, it gets brushed off. And I know there's different sting operations, and once in a while
It's like,
hear
there's more going on than you know.
you hear like, hey, there's a sting of like 120
Mm-hmm.
people got busted in the middle of Montana or something. And you feel good. You're like, okay, cool, they got that. But knowing how much it is going on everywhere, all over, and that there seems to be a lot of times people looking the other way, or people that are, we can go into something real big. There's a popular story that a gentleman that came out, the whole Epstein thing, that there's people on the list and nobody knows who's on the list. And because the people on the list are protecting the list, and I didn't really want to go down there today, but just realizing that a lot of that stuff happens where there's corruption involved. So trying to defend that by yourself is a feeling of knowing that like it's a little stone being pressured by the ocean, right? And so it's a hard place to be. But the encouraging thing is there are organizations out there that you can at least you can volunteer, you can help. For me, it was like I wanted to put positive messaging on t-shirts and then just give the profits to these organizations. That's the minimum. I could do way more, and I'm going to continue to do more. So I know I'm riffing here, but that's kind of where I want to pick up the story. So you were transitioning because you felt like that high pressure situation would be something that almost was going to put you in this like mental state that you were afraid that you wouldn't know if you can bounce back from, right? So take it away from there.
Yeah. So I just want to pause for a second and thank you, Mike, for what you're doing. And to the listener, thank you for what you're doing. Because, there's these huge causes in the world that we care deeply about, that we want to do something about. And sometimes, I'm going to get emotional, sometimes it can feel like, what can I as one person do? And what I always come back to is during that period in my life, when it felt so overwhelming, and I would hear another story of a baby who'd been trafficked or something like that, and you just, everything in you wants to do something about it. And my mom, shared with me the starfish story. And there was this person, I'm sure we've all heard it, but just as a reminder, there was this person who was walking along the beach and saw these starfish who had washed up on the shore and would, pick them up and throw them back in the ocean and pick them up and throw them back in the ocean. And somebody came along and said, what are you doing? Like, there's starfish all over the beach. Like, what? That's not going to make any impact. What's that going to matter? And the person said, well, it mattered to that one. And so to each one of you listening, thank you for what you're doing, because the impact that you have in this world is greater than you know. And whatever you did today to help in a cause, to serve somebody, to solve somebody's problem, to enrich the life of another person, I want to say to you, it mattered to that one. So thank you.
Yeah, it always matters, right? No matter how small it may feel in the size of the ocean, like I said, it does make a difference. And it's interesting that your analogy was an ocean as well. So then I know we only have a couple minutes. I really want to hear the transition. Jump right back in and let's. This is the big song and dance number at the end here. The lights are flashing.
I'll go fast. I'll go fast.
No, I'm not trying to speed you up. I'm just saying this is where we built all the way up. We've really built it up.
We've just touched the tip of the iceberg, but I do want to be sensitive to time.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to invite you back on Mic'd Up. I'd love you to come on, and because there's so much more once we talk about, becoming a boss and what you're doing and how you're really rocking it, right? As we
owning
talked about
your difference.
Owning your difference. That's a whole nother episode. But today's episode was really more about your story and getting to know you. And if some people don't know you yet, they're going to be on your social and getting to hear your story. But I would love to hear about kind of the inception of Brand Boss and just everything that you've been doing.
And this is the moment where it happened. So I had been on the road for about a month and a half. The last leg of the trip was Cambodia. Got back from this trip to Cambodia, walked off the plane, emceed a benefit concert we were doing for this organization. And the very next day, this was in 2007. So you can imagine the economy is starting to tank, right? So the very next day, my business dad, Rex, and his business partner, Chuck, brought me in their office. And with tears in their eyes, they said, Rachel, we love the work that you're doing. We just don't have the funds to put behind it anymore. While you've been away, we've had to let engineers go. We've lost contracts, like all of this. And we're so grateful and so passionate about what you're doing. We just don't have the finances to put behind it anymore. So we're going to have to let you go. So here I have just poured all of me and really found my identity in saving the world, fighting human trafficking, at a very pivotal point. Let me say it again, pivotal time in my life, right? My mid-20s. And now I'm 27 years old with this huge breadth of experience. I'm not saving the world anymore. So what do I want to be when I grow up? And back then, nobody would talk to you unless you had a degree. And so while I've just been doing public relations at the UN and the State Department and the World Bank and like these crazy places, I had a hard time finding a job, which is still mind-blowing to me. But again, this didn't happen to me. It happened for me because it launched me into really the world that I'm in now.
You know what it almost did, Rachel? It forced you to be creative. Not that you're not creative, but like if someone hired you because you had a degree and like, oh, you were working in the UN, you come over here, everything's cool. You would have unintentionally coasted, but because it wasn't made easy for you right there, this is the happening for you part. It forced you to think outside the box, and you're all about thinking outside the box. You have a whole thing about that. That's what your podcast is about, getting outside the box, getting outside your comfort zone. So there it is. It happened for you.
It happened for me. And I'm so grateful because I would have missed out on the opportunity that prepared me for where I am now. Like every part of our story prepares us for where we are. But this part that I'm about to share, like I never would have had this opportunity anywhere else. So I had to eat. And so I connected with a temp agency and they gave me a lead. Oh, and during this time, I was like, okay, who am I? What do I want to be when I grow up? And at that time, I thought maybe I'd do some writing because I had done quite a bit of writing. And I realized I only wanted something in the creative field. Like who I am through and through is creative. This is what I want. So they gave me this lead for a temp receptionist at a production company. And I was so mad that I'm not a receptionist. What are you doing? No offense to any receptionists listening. Yeah. That's just not how I'm wired. I'm like, you didn't listen to me. I said I wanted a creative job.
Right.
And they
said, that's what you were upset with. Is
that's what I was
not being heard, not being listened to hurts. It feels like, oh, we got this young woman who's got great ambition. She's a receptionist. And you're like, where did that come from?
Like, did you listen to anything I said? Right.
So that didn't feel good.
It didn't feel good. But I went to this interview and they said, well, this could get your foot in the door. That's what we thought. All right, fine. So I walk into the interview, look the president and vice president of the company in the eye, say, I am not a receptionist. I have no desire to be a receptionist. I'm here to join your creative team. And they didn't know what to do with me at that moment and said, okay, well, our receptionist is on vacation for 2 weeks. Can you start there? Like, all right, fine. So I went from saving the world to sorting the mail and I couldn't do it, Mike. Like there was no purpose in it for me. I was bored out of my skull. Then on the third day, they gave me the job of organizing their bios on the server, which I'm pretty sure is a form of punishment that they just weren't saying, right? Because 8 hours of my life, you want me to like move this one here, this, like, what am I supposed to do with myself? So I'm like, well, I might as well do something. So I started reading them. And that's when I saw they had done special effects for Hollywood. They had won national awards. They produced some of the largest sales and marketing and association events in the entire world. And that's when I realized I could be walking away from a golden opportunity. So I told them reluctantly that I would stay. And they gave me this project of sprucing up this PowerPoint. Now, again, at this point in my career, super familiar with PowerPoint, but I hadn't had access to Photoshop. And so, like every temp receptionist does, I stayed playing in Photoshop until 9:00 at night because that was the first I ever had access to the software. Put together this presentation, sent it off, having no clue it was a huge sales pitch that the president and vice president of the company were giving the next morning to a large client.
And they're just like, we'll just have Rachel do it. Nobody's supervising you, giving any direction, and they're just assuming it's going to be great. And now I know that you did put that time and energy to make it great. But the fact that you could have given them something way less under par, if you will, and they couldn't have argued with it because they didn't, you know what I mean? But
that's a good point. I never thought about that.
So
Yeah.
I think that's a whole nother conversation of how many people don't spend a lot of time and energy in like powerful presentations.
Truth.
That could be a whole nother thing. So
That
you
could be a
took
whole
this
nother thing.
moment. This is your moment to
So
shine.
this was my moment. And I didn't know it was my moment to shine. I was just like, this is cool. I have access to Photoshop. I'm going to put together this thing. So I put it together and I send it off. Again, having no clue. It's a huge sales pitch that they're giving to a very large client the next morning with no backup plan, by the way, which I was super glad I didn't know at 9:00 the night before. It goes well. They get the client. They come and thank me. Next thing I knew, the media director was in my office. Best boss I've ever had. Shout out to Deb Stetzel at Fusion Productions or wherever she may be now. But she came in my office and said, hey, you really have an eye for this, don't you? I said, heck yeah, I do. She was like, do you want another project? Yep. And so for the next several years, Mike, she would come in my office with some harebrained project. And I'd say, I got you. She'd leave. I'd get on Google. I'd get on Adobe DV. I'd get on lynda.com. And this was before the days of YouTube even, and figure it out. And so I taught myself video editing, audio editing, e-learning, motion graphics, 3D animation, illustration, set design, graphic design, content writing, like you name it. If the production company did it, I learned it and taught myself. And it's a golden opportunity.
You became this huge asset to this company who originally hired you to become or to try to put, peg in a square hole or whatever, that whole thing. And
yeah.
And wow, did they realize what they had there?
I don't think so.
Your direct manager appreciated it, but I think on a big scale, they probably overlooked. Sounds like it. So then is that where the next part of the story? So then while I was there, I decided to go back to school and get my piece of paper. And so I worked 60 to 80 hours a week at the production company and went back to school online for my degree and didn't sleep for a whole bunch of years, but I got it done. And I really feel that I got a double degree. And again, all of these things didn't happen to me. They happened for me. And I am so grateful because what that season taught me, in addition to all of the skills that I learned and the customer service and all of that, is it taught me that life is figure outable. If you don't know how to do something, you figure it out. And that's what I did. And so now I come out of this with this huge breadth of skills and experience. And, by now it's 2011 and I thought I was going to go to the city and be a designer at an ad agency in the city. That I'm so glad didn't happen because for me, that wouldn't have been the ideal career because again, that's, fit in, be like everybody else. And that's not who I am, which we'll get into when we talk about owning your difference the next time. Outside of that box. Yeah.
Outside of that box. So, but in 2011, I had, and I'll wrap this up real quick, I promise. But in 2011, I had fallen in love with a news anchor in Binghamton, New York, of all places. And so I ended up moving my life to be closer to him and got a job as a designer at an ad agency there. Neither one of those things went the way that I thought they would or that any of us had planned. But in the process of dating that news anchor, I learned organically without like, hey, I'm going to learn this. Again, this happened for me. So I learned what makes a good story, what gets the news's attention, when's the best time to hold a press conference, how to write a press release, all this stuff. I became friends with the local news media just through dating this guy. And then my time at the ad agency, I lovingly refer to as the mafia because I'm not entirely unsure that's not who I worked for, was very much the environment there. But in the midst of such a harsh environment, I learned the world of advertising. I met all the local media. So I have this huge breadth of experience that came to me through, honestly, a very difficult season in my life. But again, nothing's ever wasted. And so from there, about a year and a half later, I had a good friend who worked in admissions at a local college. And they were looking for a marketing director. And she begged me to come interview. And I didn't want that, honestly, Mike, because at that time I had this perception, I don't know why, but that marketing was like numbers and data and research, and I'm just not wired that way. But she wouldn't stop asking. So finally, I went to the interview just to get her to stop asking, got hired on the spot, and walked right into a job that took this whole diverse story that I've told you of everything from events to the skills that I gained at the production company to knowing the local news media and advertising, all of this, and put it together in this package with this incredible team of interns that are friends of mine to this day. And that was like, okay, I found it. This is it. And I've just poured myself into it.
What a mic drop moment right there. Holy smokes, Rachel. I feel that the weight of that. One of my favorite moments, we've had many of them today, just talking to you in this one interview. And I've been honored to interview, over 150 different people. And I don't know if I've ever had it circle around like that where someone articulated it the way you just did. But I want people to know right now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about the next part of your journey and you don't know what it is, and you don't want to take a gig because it may seem below you or something outside of like your realm and it's just too far out there, or you're hurting right now because maybe you either lost a job, like those guys had to come to you and say, we don't have a budget anymore. And you could have just like phoned it in and just said, this isn't going to work for me. And maybe went into something else financially or whatever. We don't know where our journey truly is going to lead us. It's important to have that light on, kind of that compass. This is how I internalize it. There's that compass dream of purpose, right? So I know what my purpose is. But the thing that's interesting is you can have purpose, but you're kind of dropped into different situations and then you make the most of that. Like in this role, in this marketing opportunity, you started to realize that all those different things, from being a little girl as a ballerina to, ad agencies and working in trafficking and everywhere in between, all the uncomfortable outside the box, learning Photoshop by yourself when they didn't even know that the day before a sales presentation, you just figured it out for them because everything's figure outable. Love that term. Your story really is something that I think can encourage people. And I hope everybody who's stuck to the end is feeling that right now, because we all want the big thing. We want to become, when we're a little kid, that baseball player in the MLB or, whatever it might be, whatever that dream is, the next Tom Cruise or whoever, like whatever the dream is, right? And it's not always just a direct line there. And then God in the universe, I feel collectively has a different plan for our greatness. But everything you went through happened for you to make you this superwoman, Wonder Woman of a human being that was perfect for what your purpose was in the moment. And we still don't know the next part of your story. You could be doing something in 2 years. Yeah. Likely you and I are going to have a lot more journey to tell in 2 years because we're involved with so many different things and we don't just sit still in one spot.
Well, and even there, it didn't end there because that was me being the college marketing director. But then in 2016, I launched out on my own, and that's where my story really begins.
That's where it really begins. But it was like, you have, that's when the magic trick, the light bulb went off.
Yeah.
And then you said, ooh, I can do something with that. And that's when you really created this whole personal branding. So tell us, someone wants to connect with you for business.
Yes.
Who do you serve, and what does it look like? Do you have a team? Is it one-on-one with yourself? Both?
Both. So what I am super passionate about, Mike, is helping. And again, I'll make this quick. It's a whole longer thing we'll get into next time we chat. I am super passionate about helping business owners have the impact they're here to have in this world. And this is a journey that I had to take myself from, being, I don't need to be seen. I don't need my face on the internet. I don't need my voice on the internet, podcast, all that stuff, to what if it's not about you? What if it's about the people you're here to impact? What if it's about the difference you're going to make in the world? That's the reason I have conversations like this. That's why I have the Brand Boss Show podcast. That's why I'm as active as I am on social media, because I know that I am here to have an impact and there are people who are waiting for me to show up. And as you are listening right now, there is someone waiting for you to show up. And I am so passionate about helping you show up, tap into the authentic identity of your personal brand and show up and be discoverable so the people who need you can find you and you can make the impact that you're here to have. So what that looks like very practically is I do personal branding coaching and consulting. I also do full done for you personal branding services where we dig into the identity of your brand and then create all of your content together and launch it for you, schedule it, report on it, all that kind of stuff. So it's both the done for you and the done with you is the coaching program. But what I'm super passionate about is helping business owners see what I couldn't see for so many years, which was the greatness in yourself. That is what other people are searching for right now, and then help you have the courage to step out in that powerfully and authentically.
Wow. Standing ovation, Rachel Jenks. That was so well said.
Thank you.
You know, I know there's a lot of people, including myself, that can benefit from working with you. So we'll talk about that. There's so many people that aren't working with you or someone like you or an agency like yourself that needs it. I see a lot of stuff. I just look at it and go, oof, this is a great company, but how are you? You got to come out. And so it's about getting present with the right people. What I absolutely love about you and your story and your business is that you're not just talking about creating great content, marketing content with an ROI, all the stuff that we love to hear and love to be pitched on. I say that tongue in cheek, that we get pitched on in our LinkedIn inboxes. I can make you this many leads. We can close you this many deals. And half the time it's just like, man, you're just vomiting information, but you're not doing that. You're actually talking about making a difference, connecting with an audience, getting that customer is not just an avatar. It's a real human being. It's a person. And you're into tapping into that real relationship that we need to have with our customers and clients as a business. And that's where you're different. You're different because you can just say, hey, we have the best graphics. They're vibrant. They're great. We have quality people. Our videos look phenomenal. Our email marketing is second to none. Awesome. But you're actually purpose driven, which gets me excited. I'm like, oh, like, yeah, like I want to get you out to the world. So people, please tune in with Rachel Jenks. The show notes have all of her links. Her website is clickable there for you as well. We are going to do 2.0. We're going to do that as soon as possible. And I'd love to have you. We'll talk more practical, some like 101 marketing, but also like real tools that people can use for their business. That's what we'll talk about next time. Any closing words you'd like to say before heading out?
So this is kind of a little teaser to 2.0, but I just want to encourage you. Everything that you've heard about my story is different, is non-traditional, right? If you are listening right now and you're like, oh, my journey doesn't look like everybody else, it's not supposed to. It's supposed to look like you. You have permission to live your journey. You have permission to live your story. And no part of your story, even the parts that you look back and you're like, well, that was awful. No part of it is ever wasted. And if you look back and you look for the gold, I guarantee you will find it. And I can say that because that's happened in my own life. And who the people that you're here to impact need you to be is exactly who you are. And there is gold in your story that wasn't just for you, but it's for them too. So I know it is hard to be different. We'll talk about that more next time. But when you have the courage to own your difference, who this world needs you to be is exactly who you are. And that includes the fullness of your journey. And I hope more than anything, man, I'm going to cry. I hope more than anything, you haven't just heard my story today, but I hope that there has been encouragement released to your heart to keep going. You matter. Your journey matters. And the impact that you have already and are going to have is greater than you know.
Wow. Who the world needs you to be is exactly who you are. That may be the best thing that anybody's ever said to me. And to anyone who's listening, I can feel that they agree with me on that. That was powerful, Rachel. That was amazing. I felt your energy in that statement. I just love your story. I love who you are. I'm so happy to have you on the show. I'm honored to have everybody on the show, but this is why when in 2019 in November, I got this weird heart tug to do a podcast. I just barely knew what I was doing in podcasting at the time. And it was to do this. It was to have these conversations and to get this out. And I didn't know what magic was going to come. But when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. So I'm hearing you say that right now. who you are is exactly who the world needs you to be, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's true. It's so true. And everybody listening can relate to that. And sometimes we feel when we lose our way a little bit, we don't necessarily hear that same voice. So go back and reconnect to it. That was magic. That was so, so good. I could talk to you all day long. We're going to schedule 2.0. Thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody the same last 2 words. Well, 4 words, really. Be great and be grateful. I'm grateful for you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with us today.
I'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone for tuning in, especially those who listen all the way to the end to hear this message. Seriously, I appreciate you, and my guests do as well. Giving a quick reminder to subscribe to this show. It's completely free and will allow you to receive notifications when new episodes are released. If you'd like to provide a tip as a gift, you can do so via patreon.com/micedup. It's spelled MIKED up. Patreon.com/micedup. You can give as little as $1 per month or as much as you'd like. Every dollar is greatly appreciated and completely unexpected. Appreciate your reviews and your messages coming in on social as well. Keep them coming. Your feedback is valuable and absolutely means the world to me. You can check out more episodes and content at mikeduppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, and it's at Mike DiCiccio, MIKEDICIOCCIO. Thank you so much for your continued support. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.